Okay, here we go. Hello, hello. Welcome everybody that is here. We're going to get started. Hopefully the others will join us soon. If you can hear me okay, let me know. Leave a message here so I know my sound is coming through. It looks to me like it is, but if you could just confirm that it is for me, that would be great. I don't want to move on if you can't hear me. So just let me know that there, and then we will move on to the next thing. I see we have the Hansons, Abigail, Chaden, Danielle. Let me know if you can hear me, and we will get started. All right. Looks like sound is coming through as far as I'm being told. So let's get into our presentation for tonight. If you don't yet have a piece of paper or a notebook or the document that I sent by email, get something so that you can take notes and help you learn the things that you need to know from tonight. So today is day 2 of our Money Mindset 102 class. And last night we talked about the importance of having a healthy view of money. So we talked about how good money management begins by having the right mindset toward money. And there we go. Having a healthy view of money. We talked about questions that we need to ask when dealing with money. We ask questions about money all the time, whether we vocalize it or not. We see something and we say, should I buy that? Should I not buy that? Should I go to this event? Should I not go to this event? People maybe have asked you before, and I asked last night, do you want to be rich? I asked last night, do you wish that you had enough money you could get whatever you want whenever you want? There's a lot of questions that go on when we are talking about money, and we want to make sure that we are asking the right questions. Good questions come from having the right perspective on life, and bad questions come from having the wrong perspective on life. So we talked about our perspective on life. Why does life exist? Who created life? Who is life about? We also talked about where Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22:37 through 39. It's also found, I believe, in Luke, and these are quotations from the Old Testament. And so Jesus was saying, this is the perspective you should have on life. The greatest commandments are to put God first and to put others second. And if you have that perspective on life, if you have that perspective on money, you will have a healthy view of money. There you go. This is a healthy perspective of life. It will help you ask the right questions when deciding how to earn, how to spend, how to save, how to invest, and how to give your money. The homework for last night, and for those of you who are just coming in now, or if you maybe missed last night and you're joining us now for the first time, the homework was to list the things in life that are most important to you. And so I would like you now in the chats to share that with us. Maybe you have a really long list. We don't necessarily need the whole list, but it'd be nice if you could share 5, 6, maybe if you had 10 things, a list of the things that you wrote down that you consider to be very important. Whether that was people, activities, items, I would like it right now if you guys could all get in the chat and share what are those things that you consider to be most important to you in life. So I will wait for those messages to come in. While you're doing that, if you were here yesterday, you saw I showed several pictures of things that Alyssa and I have done. One of them, after graduating from school, Alyssa went to Guam and she taught there. That's because something that she highly values in life is teaching. She loves to teach kids. She loves to teach adults too. But she is a great teacher, and the reason is because that's something that she really values, and she has become good at it. I showed you that we like to travel whenever we get the chance around the U.S. We also like to go internationally. The reason is because we place a high value on being able to see other things around the world, being able to get out of what we just know here in the Midwest. We have a high value on international ministry and missions. And so when we have the opportunity to be a part of that, we like to do that. I showed you that sometimes we rent nice fancy vehicles when we're traveling. The reason is because we do like to have fun. We place some value, not more value than other things, but we do place value on being able to do fun things. And so if we are renting a car and the second cheapest thing just happens to be a fun car, we might spend $5 or $10 more to do that. Some of those times when we do that, it just so happens that because of our travel benefits and stuff, that it actually is the lowest thing available. Not always, but often that's the case. And so that's another one of our values, is being able to enjoy life a little. I see some answers here. Family, friends, health from Abigail. I see with, I'm not sure who the, okay, Chaden. He's not the can we get 1,000 subscribers with no videos, ? He is the Chan. God, people is my life, church, my Bible, nummy foodsies. Who else? Gonna get in here and share some of the values that you have. Okay, Robertson's here. We have being able to visit family. Danielle, my husband, my children, ministry, church freedom, ice cream. Yep. I value ice cream too. Now, do I value it more than other things on my list? No, I'd rather travel than have ice cream if I could only choose one. But ice cream is a lot cheaper. Joanna, family, friends, pets, health, and trying new things. All right, good. If anyone else joins us and is willing to share in the chat as well, you can go ahead and do that. But I'm going to move on to our next part of the slides here. And today, we are going to talk about budgeting and saving. And we're also going to get more into budgeting here at the end of the week. I mean, we're going to get more into saving here at the end of the week. So today is going to focus primarily on budgeting, but saving is part of budgeting. So what is budgeting? I would like it if in the chat you could share your definition of budgeting. What is budgeting? Try to keep it to like a sentence. Those of you who want to write 500 words, I appreciate that. But you can share your 500-word definition of budgeting with me on Sunday. Right now, I just want your simple definition of what is budgeting. What does it mean to make a budget? And after you have shared your definition of budgeting, I am going to give you a one-word definition, and maybe you'll understand where we're going once I do that. Oh, I like that one. Telling your money where it will go. Good. Having a set amount on which you spend on said items. Good. Very good. Anybody else? Go ahead and enter that in, your definition of budgeting. Here is my definition. A budget is a plan, and budgeting is planning. And budgeting, if you think about it, budgeting is more than just what you do with your money. Budgeting is you budget your time when you make a schedule. You can budget other resources besides money. If you're rationing food because for whatever reason you're not going shopping till the end of the week, and so you're trying to figure out, okay, what can I do with this and what can I do with these ingredients? You're budgeting your food. You're making a meal plan. That is all budgeting. It's more than just money. Knowing where to put your money, that's also a good definition. So today we're going to talk about budgeting and how to make a budget, and when I use those words, I'm going to use them interchangeably. Now, can you always use them interchangeably? No, you cannot. But that's what I'm going to do today, is when I refer to a budget, I'm referring to a plan for your money, and when I talk about budgeting, I'm talking about planning, whether that's your time or your money or anything else. Maybe you've heard the phrase before, those who fail to plan, plan to fail. And I would say those who fail to budget, budget to fail. You guys are all here because you know that it is important to plan. And so I appreciate that, because knowing what your money is doing, where it's going, telling it where to go is all very important. And it's all planning. That's what God would have us to do with what He has given us. In Luke chapter 14, 25 through 33, Jesus told people to count the cost of following Him. He gave two examples of people who make plans or accept failure as a result. So this was all in the context of discipleship. Jesus told people, if you want to follow me, if you want to come after me, you have to take up your cross. And what did He mean by that? He meant you have to be willing to give up what you already love and potentially even die for me. You have to be willing to go through hard things for my name's sake. You have to decide ahead of time that you're going to do this and that it's worth it. And then if you make that decision, great. That's what God wants us to do. But when He gave this, when He told these people this, He gave them a couple illustrations. In verses 28 through 30, He said, "For which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" I have seen an example of this before. Maybe you have too. When I was in Brazil in 2013, we passed by this huge mall. It was all concrete, except it wasn't finished. It didn't even have a roof on it. And there were already plants that had grown up inside and around it that were taller than the walls, because someone had set out to build this mall and to rent out space to people and to bring in people, to bring in the money, and they did not budget enough money to finish the project. And so there was this huge empty complex, and when people drove by, they looked at it and they knew, or they would tell each other, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." So it's a really good visual if you ever happen to see that. What happens if a person does not plan accordingly. In Luke 14, verses 31 through 32, Jesus continued with a second illustration. He said, "Or what king going to make war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace." Wise people make plans and follow them. That's the point. So whether you're deciding to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, you have to decide you're going to do it, and then you have to stick to it. You got to follow it all the way through. If you're going to take good care of your money, have the right mindset, manage it right, you need to make a plan. What are you going to do with your money? And then you need to stick to that plan all the way through. At the same time, just as it's important to plan, it's also important to plan correctly. A bad plan is just like making no plan at all. And in some instances, it's actually worse if you make a plan and don't follow that plan, or you make a bad plan. It's a waste of time to make a plan if it's not even the right one. So hopefully we can help you figure out what it looks like to make a good plan when you are figuring out where your money will go, where you want it to go. And we're going to talk about the different ways to budget, how budgeting can help you cover all of your expenses, and how it can enable you to do some amazing things. And also remember that this whole idea of budgeting, as I mentioned earlier, applies to more than just money. It also applies to time, and it applies to your spiritual life. It goes beyond just this. But today we're talking about money. And last night, as a reminder, we talked about how God doesn't call money good or bad, but the Bible talks about how to understand wealth and how to use it wisely. So in the chat, I want to ask you if you could write down some of the things that we talked about last night that the Bible says about money. So go ahead and enter in your thoughts, or if you want to refer to your notes from last night, that's fine as well. Write down some of the things that we talked about that the Bible says about your money. And while you are doing that, I am going to get a drink. What does the Bible say about money? What does the Bible say about money? We had 7 different things, and of course the list I gave last night is not exhaustive. The Bible talks about money a lot. I don't remember, and obviously when people come up with statistics and numbers, there's always going to be different numbers, because some people will say, well, this applies to money, but I don't think that one does. But I believe there are hundreds of passages that refer to money in one way or another. Okay, money creates greed if used unwisely. Yes, one of the things we talked about was greed. The Bible talks about avoiding greed and materialism, the dangers of greed, and those who pursue wealth make it their primary focus in life. Okay. What else? Avoiding debt. Yep. And what was it? In Proverbs 14:23, God talks about how those who are in debt are slaves to those who loan them the money. And so it's much better to work hard and to have what you need and not to go into debt to others and continually be paying off to others, because you're just going to be a slave for a long time. Being a good steward, that's a big one in Scripture. Being a good steward of all that God has given us, our money, our possessions. God has entrusted to us things that He has for us to own and to use, and so we need to take care of those. Working hard, diligence. Colossians 3:23 talks about this. Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord. Do it to the best of your ability. Okay, I think I have that list right here. We should be good stewards. We should be content. Work hard. We should give generously. Avoid greed. Avoid debt. And this is a big one. We should trust in God. It doesn't mean that we don't work because we are only trusting God. We work because we do trust God, and because we know that God has ordained work as a way for Him to provide for us. So as we look at this list and think about budgeting, budgeting is somehow related to everything here. So when it talks about being good stewards, I mean, that's the core of what budgeting, what it means to plan your money. That's what good stewardship is. Being content. When you budget and you look at where money is going, or where you're deciding where it will go, it helps you to be content because you realize that God is providing and He is giving you what you need. And contentment in budgeting also keeps you from overspending in areas where you shouldn't be. You practice contentment by saying, okay, it would be really nice to spend $200 a week on restaurants, but I know that I don't have to, and I can be content with not doing that, so I'm not going to make my budget that amount. That's just one example. Working hard. Part of doing a budget is being able to come back to it time and time again and be diligent about adjusting numbers, raising numbers if necessary, decreasing others. It's something that you have to keep going back to if you want to be successful with it. Giving generously. When you budget well, you actually help yourself have money to give to others. Similar with the point on being content, budgeting will help us avoid greed. Budgeting will help us avoid debt because we're making sure that everything we buy, we actually have money for it. And then budgeting is a way to trust in God and see that He provides, and making sure that I'm not spending money in places I shouldn't be spending money, so that I need God to come to my rescue and provide me with more money than I really have. So budgeting plays into all these different things. The benefits of budgeting, we're going to take a look at those. Budgeting helps you gain control over your finances. It helps you reduce financial stress. It identifies areas for savings, and it helps you work toward long-term goals. And if you can think of any other benefits of budgeting, go ahead and add that to the chat as well so I can see that. These are 4 of the big benefits of budgeting. It doesn't mean that it's all of them. You can maybe think of other things as well. So now we're going to go back to that concept of values-based money management. So if you value your family, your friends, your health, your church, your life, yummy food, ice cream, being able to visit family, pets, all those things, as we determine our values, they're going to help guide us as we budget. As I said last night, value-based money management is a concept where you only spend money on things that align with your deeply held values. So now what I want to do is I'm going to show you some sample budgets. I'm going to show you 4, and I want you to take a look at them, and I want you to decide what does this person value, and I want you to put that in the chat. So we're going to start with our first one here. We're going to look at this monthly budget for Sanchez. And I want you to look at this and say, what does Sanchez value? Now, some of you say, well, I don't really have anything to go off because I don't have money for any of these things. Maybe you say, well, my parents might look at this list and have a good idea of what he values, but I'm kind of just lost here. That's okay. If that's the case, go ahead and just chat right in there, say, not sure. But if you do have a better idea and you look at this list and can say, okay, I'm thinking Sanchez values this more than this. Go ahead and write that in. Tell me what you think it is. So cell phone, $25 a month, groceries, $250 a month. And think about all these as just an individual. So this isn't Sanchez's family. This is just one person. What do you think Sanchez values? And I am also going to then move on to the second one, going out to eat. Okay. If you think about this as one person, $250 for groceries, $250 for restaurants, $500 a month overall. Yes, Sanchez values food. He likes to eat. He likes to enjoy good things. And so as you look at the next three budgets, you're going to see the restaurant budget may not be as high for some of them. The groceries may not even be as high for some of them because they don't value the food like Sanchez does. Oh, I also like that from Chaden. He values necessities. Very good. Because a lot of these things are necessities and they're reasonable amounts. So yeah, exactly. He values having some of the necessities in life, but he especially values the food. Okay, let's look at the next one. And that is Liliana. What does she value? We see cell phone here is the same, groceries are a little less, and restaurants are much lower than what Sanchez had. As you can see, she does also value the necessities. But there should be one thing in particular here as you look at it that it really sticks out to you and you say, wow, that is a lot of money for that one thing. Also, if it seems like I'm pausing a long time after you share your answer, it is because of the delay with things, and I don't want to move on to the next thing until I actually see your answers. Okay, Joanna, clothes. There it is. If we look at Sanchez and his monthly budget, his clothes were $25 a month, and Liliana is $300 a month. Now, can you imagine what a nice wardrobe you might have if you spent $300 every single month just for you on clothes? I'm sure you'd look impressive. But that is what Liliana values. The next one here, Herschel. What does Herschel value? Not the clothes. Not that he doesn't need the clothes. He still has it in there. But there is something else that Herschel budgets a little higher for than some of the others. And what is it? His groceries are much lower than some of the others. There you go, Chaden. he values traveling. So you, Abigail, there you go. So the travel budget is higher, the car and gas is higher, and the restaurants are high too. Because if you're traveling a lot, unless you decide to go to the grocery store to buy your food, a lot of people, when they're traveling, they tend to eat at restaurants. And so we put all those things together, and you can see that Herschel values travel. Our last one here is Marissa. And so here's your last opportunity to figure out what is it that Marissa values. I don't know if anyone has been noticing too, but she has the highest overall income or budget. I guess we don't know specifically what the income is, but hopefully each of these people budget according to their income. But she has the highest total budget of everybody on this list at $3,075 per month. Can you tell what it is that she values? Okay, Abigail says savings. Chaden says her house. Yep. And you put those two things together as well as the overall budget amount. And this person, Marissa, values her overall wealth and maybe even retirement. She is saving a lot of money because she wants to be able to retire and have a nice standard of living, or maybe she wants to retire early. And one of your best investments in life is your house. So not just the money you put in the bank and in investments, but your house can be a substantial investment as well. And maybe she's even working more, and that's why she has a higher budget than the others, because she has more money that she can use than to put toward different things. So there you go. Your monthly expenses will reveal your values even if you don't realize it. And so when you start to add up all the things that you spend money on, you can tell, okay, this is important to me. And sometimes you may find out that you are spending more money on things that you didn't even realize you're spending that much money on it. And that's because you value something and you didn't even realize that you valued it as much as you do. Many people struggle with money because they spend money on whatever they want, whenever they want, rather than choosing to use their money only on things that are important to them. And usually this happens because they did not make a plan. They did not make a budget. Now, sometimes it will happen because they did make a budget. They do have a plan, but they're not following it. And they're not being diligent. And so, in many cases, they have bad values and priorities, and they don't realize it. And so they waste their money because of those bad values or an unhealthy perspective. So now I'm going to do a poll here in the chat. And let's see. Let's see if I can. There we go. So the question is going to be, how many of you would say that pleasure and convenience are really, really important to your family? So I will put that in here. Would you say that pleasure and convenience are really, really important to your family? So if you can answer that, I will also put the question up here on our slides. Is pleasure and convenience really, really important to your family? Don't think too hard about it. Okay, we have one person that says yes. And by the way, these are also anonymous, so I can see how many people voted and I can see the results, but I can't see who said what. So you can be honest. Would you say that pleasure and convenience are really, really important to your family? All right. We've got 2 yeses and 1 no. We have a couple more people on here who can vote. Is pleasure and convenience something that you value? Something that your family values? Now, I would say, if you answered yes, and now it looks like we're at 50-50. If you answered yes, and I looked at your budget and I saw that you spent a lot of money on, I don't know, entertainment, maybe bought things for your house, that maybe dishwasher, air conditioning, movies, things like that. If you said yes and your budget reflects a lot of those things, I would say, okay, yeah, you got it figured out. Pleasure and convenience are important to you. Now, if you were to say, no, pleasure and convenience aren't really that important, I'm okay with not having nice things, I'm okay with working a little harder to get things done, but then I looked at your budget and I saw that you spent a lot of money on things that make life more comfortable, or maybe you go out to restaurants a lot, or maybe you go and buy coffee 2-3 times a week, then I would say, okay, that's what you say, but I don't believe you because your budget actually shows something different. I don't know what the statistics are. This is just an example, but a lot of people in our country spend a lot of money on eating out and on the $5-6 coffees on their way to work or something like that. Going and buying something at a gas station. That's how they make their money at the gas stations, is not so much off the gas, but off the people who come in and buy the overpriced food and items and things that they have so easily accessible. But what that is all those are examples of pleasure and convenience. And so if you answered no, and maybe that's exactly right. But just think through it a little. Sometimes we say, well, this is what I value, but maybe you actually spend more money on things that would betray what you say your values are. My family is boring. Isn't that the family that just got back from Disney or something? I don't know that that's boring. I've never been there. Maybe it is boring, actually. But based on the pictures I saw, it looked like a lot of fun. Anyway, so your budget will reflect what your true values are. All right, going on to the next thing here. Show me how you spend your time, show me how you spend your money, and I'll know exactly what is important to you. And this goes not just for the family, not just for the individual. This is for the business. This is for the church. However, businesses, churches, families, schools, however they spend their money, however they spend their time, indicates what is important to them. So, what are the different ways to budget? Well, we have here a few of the ways. These are not all the different options for budgeting, but these are a few of the more popular ones. There is the traditional zero-based budgeting. And what this means is that you allocate specific amounts to different categories such as housing, transportation, food, savings, entertainment. And your goal is to balance your income and expenses with the goal of not spending more than you earn. So you have on paper, okay, $3,000 per month is my income, and after you allocate money to all these different categories, the end result is $3,000. So your output is exactly the same as your income. Zero-based budgeting makes sure every dollar has a purpose so that the income minus the expenses equals zero. Doesn't mean that you're spending all the money, because you would have savings, investments in there as well. It just means that you know exactly where everything is going and it has a plan. There's the envelope system, which if you are comfortable with cash and having it around and using it, the envelope system is where you take envelopes and you assign specific amounts of cash to the different categories. So you literally take your dollar bills or your $100 bills and you put them in the different envelopes, and then you go to the store and you bring that envelope with you, and you only spend up to the amount of money that is in that envelope and nothing more. And when it's gone, you don't go to the store anymore because you've used up your budget. This is a really good way for people who just really struggle with their money and need a way that absolutely will not let them spend more than they bring in. The envelope system can be a little tedious, it can be a little cumbersome, but it's really helpful for people who maybe really struggle with overspending. Then there is the 50-30-20 rule, and the guidelines here is that 50% of your income goes to the necessities like rent, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. 30% goes to discretionary expenses, so that would be just the things that you don't have to have but you like to do, like dining out, entertainment, hobbies, buying books. And then 20% goes to savings and repaying your debt. Or if you don't have any debt, it just goes 20% into savings and investing. Number 4 here is very similar. Percentage-based budgeting. That's where you take your income and different percentages go for different things, and as your income grows or decreases, the percentages stay the same. So 30% might be for housing, 15% for transportation, 10% for savings, 5% for food, whatever. And if you get a $5,000 raise at the end of the year, and so next year you're getting paid $5,000 more, your budget just reflects 30% of $5,000 goes into this, 15% of it goes into this, and so everything stays the same relatively to each other. That is percentage-based budgeting. And then there's the ghost budgeting. This is where you don't have a written budget, but you simply choose to spend only the bare minimum on necessities and save everything else. So does that make sense? You don't write down a budget. Maybe you don't even think about it. You just say, okay, my mortgage is $1,000 a month. I'm going to spend $1,000. I don't even have to budget it. I just have to do that because that's what it is. And my fridge is empty, so I need to go buy some food. So I'm going to buy the cheapest things I can get. I'm not going to worry about spending less than $100 because I know that it's going to be less than that. That's the idea, that you just only spend what you need to get the bare minimum of all your necessities covered, and then you save the rest of your money. I would say this probably only works for about 1% of people, because most people don't have enough self-control not to spend the money that isn't budgeted. And so some people can do this and it works fine, and they don't have debt and they're saving money and investing it. But most people need some kind of a plan that they can follow, that they can see, that they can abide by. So now you look at these and you say, and again, there are other ways to do it. These are the most basic, traditional ways to do it. Which one do you choose? It depends on your income. It depends on your expenses. And it depends on where you are in life. A lot of you here, your parents provide for your housing and your food. And so you don't have to budget for a lot of those things. And so maybe the 50-30-20 rule doesn't work because you don't have to spend 50% on the necessities. That's already taken care of. So maybe you go more of the route of just the zero-based budgeting, where I'm going to say my money goes for these things, but I don't necessarily have to plan for a lot of the big expenses that maybe my parents have to plan for. So you kind of have to, and maybe you do a hybrid of some of these. It's not going to be the same budgeting method for everybody. How do you budget? So those are the different ways that it can be done. What does it actually look like on paper? Traditionally, people start with their income or their expenses and work out all the numbers until it falls into the various categories and makes sense. So you write down your income. All right, I just got a job and I'm getting $500 a month because I only work part-time, so I can't make a budget that's more than $500. And then you start writing down the things that you have to spend money for. So, okay, I have a car because I work at my job, and so I need my car, and so I need to pay $15 a week for gas. And maybe you also pay insurance, so you have to put that in there. And you don't have to pay for a lot of food because your parents do that. But when you're working, maybe you buy a snack every time you're there. And so you add in, okay, this is what it's going to cost me. That's traditionally how people do that. And then they look at all the numbers, they add them up, and then they adjust so that it fits within what their income is. I recommend beginning with your income the same way, especially for those of you who are younger and you don't have much money or a consistent income yet and not all of the expenses. You don't necessarily need to write out all the different things like housing and different insurances that maybe your parents cover and that kind of a thing. But still start with your income, and then instead of listing your expenses, list your values. And what I mean by that is I value getting to work in a vehicle instead of walking there, especially here in Minnesota where 8 months out of the year it snows. So I value being able to have my car and to go to work, and so I am going to put in car expenses and gas and insurance. Now maybe you say, you know what, I really want to work, but I don't think it's very important for me to have the car, and so I'm not going to budget for that. I'm just going to let this car sit there and not use it right now, and I'm going to walk. Okay, so now your values indicate that you can decrease that part of your budget and use the money for something else. So figure out what your values are. Maybe you say, you know what, I love my church and I want to give to God a portion of what He has given me. So I am going to put down that I'm going to give this much money every month because I value God and I value my church. So list out the things that you value. Most people are going to keep their house in there because they value their house. You should. And so you put that in there. And sometimes you're going to have to go a little deeper to figure out what your underlying values are, what the values are behind your the surface ones. So maybe you say, well, I want to put down $200 a month for food because I value food. Okay, do you really value food, or do you value the pleasure of eating food? If you value pleasure, and then your food budget might be a little higher. If you say, no, I just want to eat because it gives me the energy that I need to do things every day, in which case you can budget lower and you only buy the basics: rice, vegetables, those kind of things. Maybe not so much the meat because the pleasure side isn't as important to you, but being healthy is. Or maybe you say, well, I'm going to budget higher for food because I value the more expensive food that really does keep me healthy, and I'm very sure of that. Then that is higher. And so what you're doing is you're not just saying, I value food, but you're saying, okay, what are the values behind this that are important to me? And then let that dictate how much you have in each place. Maybe you got a job because you wanted to be able to go on missions trips and serve in different ways. And so you budget in such a way that your money is falling into that category of ministry, personal ministry. So figure out what your values are rather than necessarily saying, well, I know that I need to spend money for this and this is what the average person spends for this, so I'm just going to match that. Obviously, do not list anything that is covered by another source. So if your parents pay for your housing, you don't need to put that in your budget. Should be self-explanatory, I would think. All right, and then you need to review your budget on a monthly basis because things change. Some things go up in price. Some things go down in price. Right now, eggs are a lot cheaper than they were 6 months ago. And so maybe if eggs were a high percentage of your food budget, maybe that looks a little different now. Maybe someday you're renting an apartment and your rent goes up. Okay, now you need to adjust your budget so that that area has more. Things change so much. Maybe your income even changes. Maybe you don't know if you're going to get this much money this month because you work DoorDash, and the next month it's going to be a lot higher. So budget every month, look at your budget, review it, see if changes need to be made. Maybe you at one time said, yeah, I really like watching TV, and now you've decided, you know what, that's really not something I value. There are other things that I believe are more important. So you cut out your cable or your whatever, and you now are not spending money in that category. And after you do that, adjust accordingly. Budgeting for big expenses. Well, before we get to that, I do want to mention you can budget on a piece of paper. You can write out your whole budget, maybe even on a napkin. Some people can do that. Maybe you say, well, I'm a little more techie. I would prefer to do it on my computer or on my phone. There are various apps for doing it that way. I like to use one called Mint, and you put in all your income. You can add your bank account so it can see how much money you have in there, and as you spend money, you just record it in there. You write, okay, it was for this, and so then they say, okay, this is how much money is left in your budget. What's nice about Mint too is they will even keep track and say, this month you spent this much less money than you spent in this area last month, and they can suggest that you change your budget based on how your spending habits change. So that's really cool. But there are other ones out there too, and there's apps that you can pay for on a monthly basis if you want something with a little more power and options. I also really like doing it in Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. Basic, normal spreadsheets. But I like it because you can put in your information, and then once you learn some of the basic functions, you can have it add things up automatically for you. And that's really cool when it does that, and then you can review it pretty easily. Budgeting for big expenses. What are some expenses that might not take place on a monthly basis? Let's take a look at some of those. We have a house, a car. Purchasing a car is not something you do every month, I think. Missions trip, vacation, gifts, youth rallies, summer camp, house and car repairs, retirement, self-employment taxes. Those are all things that you have to budget, but it's harder because they aren't monthly things. They're once in a life things, maybe once in a year things. And so how do you budget for those? once again, you budget in such a way that you're setting aside money. So maybe you set aside money for a car repair, $30 a month, and the month went by, you didn't spend it, you don't. So that what that does then is you just keep track. Okay, now after 2 months I have $60 saved up, and so you need to keep track in a separate place how much money you're accruing after all these months, so that you can prepare for those other things. That's what savings is. That's what investing is. You're using all this money, setting it aside, even though you don't plan to use it for a long time. But I would really encourage you to do this. Let's say you want to go on a vacation in 5 months, and you start planning your vacation and you figure out, okay, it's going to cost about $1,200. Well, if you start intentionally saving and setting aside $250 a month right now, by the time your vacation comes around, you will have saved up enough money for that. If you do not budget for these big expenses in your monthly budget, you will allocate that money to something else, and you will probably spend it. And then when the time comes when you need money for a bigger purchase, you'll go to your bank account and you don't have that money, because you budgeted it and spent it on other things. So for a lot of these things, they need to be in your budget in such a way that you are saving the money so that it's not being spent on other things. That way, when these things come along, you are able to cover them with no problem. This year, I decided I was going to use one of my checking accounts specifically for cars, vehicle expenses. And so I have it being deducted from my main bank account, sending money into this other account, so that this money is adding up month after month, so that when I have to repair a vehicle, I can just go there and I have the money, I didn't spend it on something else. Or if the time comes when I say, wow, look, I have $5,000 that I've saved for expenses for my vehicles, I can actually just buy another car. But you have to budget in this way and prepare for these things. Otherwise, like I said, you aren't going to have the money when you really need it. And that's what gets a lot of people in trouble, is when these things come along and emergencies come along and they haven't prepared because they always spent all their money every single month. Now they have a problem. Okay, so here is your homework for tomorrow. I want you to make a realistic monthly budget for yourself, and something that is based on your monthly income. So if right now you only have allowance, I want you to make a budget based on how much money you have coming in from your allowance. If you have a job, use the income from your job. You can do it on a piece of paper. You can do it in the notes that I sent out. You can do it on your computer or on a phone. It would help if you did a Google search for sample budgets to see, okay, here are some of the things that the average person needs to spend money on each month, and make sure you include some of those things. But again, look at those through the perspective of your values. And don't just add something to your list because somebody else spends money on it. You may decide that you don't need to spend money on that, or you don't need to spend as much money on it. And also figure out what expenses you'll have in the future and how you can prepare and save for those. So, if you know that you need to save money for a trip, factor that into your budget and have that ready. I would like it if you guys can share that budget with me. If you could email it to me, then I can take a look at it and I can give some suggestions, or I can just say, hey, you know what? Great. Thank you for putting in the work. That will help you. Accountability. The reason I'm asking you to do the homework and send it to me is because if you plan to do something but you don't have someone keeping you accountable, chances are most of the time you're not actually going to do it. We often think about accountability in the context of making sure we don't fall into sexual sins. especially for men. But accountability is much more than that. If you decide at the beginning of the year, I am going to go on a diet and I am going to work out, I am going to lose 10 pounds this year, but then you go to a party and there's food there that's not in your diet, but it's food you really like, are you going to stick to your plan? Are you going to stick to your health budget, or are you not going to? You need to have somebody who can keep you accountable and say, hey, you said you were going to do this. I'm going to make sure you actually do. One way that you can do this is you can say to somebody, you know what, I'm spending way too much money on candy or video games, whatever it is. And say to someone, hey, can you check up on me every month and ask me how I did and make sure I didn't spend more money than $10 a month on this? And then they do it. But also say, and if at any time I'm dishonest with you or I say I don't want to answer, then I'm going to give you $50. And I'm going to make that agreement now because I really don't want to do that. And so that will be motivation to make sure I actually stick to my plan. That can be a way that you can keep yourself accountable, is find somebody else and give them some incentive to keep you accountable so that now it's all on you to make sure you actually follow through. Also, when it comes to planning, budgeting, the best time to plan and make decisions is when everything is calm and your emotions are stable. Do not make plans when emotions are high and time is moving fast and things are happening. You tell yourself, this is my grocery budget. When I go to the store and I see all these other things on sale that I don't normally get and they'll make me go over budget, you say, I am not going to do it. But if you don't decide now to do that, you just say, well, we'll just see what happens. I'll go to the store, and you see all these things on sale that you really don't need, but you buy them anyway because at the moment your emotions are high. You see things and you're like, oh, that is such a great deal. I've got to do it. You need to make your plans when you don't have those things there. And then you go and you stick to that plan. You pull your budget out of your pocket. You look at it. Or if your accountability partner is a family member and they're there with you and they say, nope, you can't do it. You said you wouldn't. So you want to make your plans, your budgets, before times come when you actually have the opportunity to spend your money. When those times come, refer to your plan and have somebody else hold you accountable. All right. So yesterday I asked you to make this KHL chart or to use the ones that I sent you in the notes. I would ask you now to write down something you've learned and also put it in the chat so that we can all see what you have learned. And then the homework, make a realistic monthly budget for yourself. Send it to me tomorrow, or do it tonight, send it to me tonight. Whether that's on paper and you take a picture and send it to me, or you do it on the computer. So make sure you do your homework. But I would like you to share in the chat here something that you have learned either yesterday or today. And then if you say, okay, we've already gone over an hour, I gotta go, that's fine. You are welcome to leave whenever you're ready. Otherwise, if you have questions here and you want to ask them, especially as it pertains to budgeting and saving, I will stay on here until everyone's questions are answered. There's just so much that goes into it, and that's why I couldn't really get into super great detail on everything, because there's just so much and everyone's situation is different. If you say, I would really like it if you could help me figure out budgeting for my personal situation, I'd be glad to do it. I won't even charge you. I'll do it for free. If your budget is $50 a month because that's what you have, or now you have a job and you're making more than that, or you've been working for a long time, whatever your situation is, I'd be glad to take a look at your finances with you and help you figure out a reasonable budget based on what you have. And if you want me to keep you accountable, if you want my wife to keep you accountable, we'd be glad to do that as well. But let me know if I can help you in any way, specifically when it comes to budgeting and saving and those kinds of things. Any questions and anything you learned that you're willing to share in the chat here? Are we able to watch the replay? Yes. I do have these being recorded as they are streaming, and so I can share the replay with you. What I'll do is I will send you an email with the link from yesterday and the link for today, because I am keeping them unlisted after we finish so that you can't search for them. You can't just go on to YouTube and find them. But they are still available as long as I give you that link. So I will email out the links so that you can have those. How can you budget when you're not sure what your income is going to be monthly? That's a very good question, especially when you're just starting out on a job or you have a part-time job and you work 12 hours this week and next week you work 20 hours and the week after that you work 8 hours. It's kind of how Alyssa's job is right now because she's part-time. It's different every week. So how do you plan for that when it keeps changing? I would say when you're looking at your income, you need to write down the least amount that you think you're going to make. So, Abigail, you have a job and you say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to work at least 8 hours every week. Then I would base your budget on that amount. And if it comes in more than that, let's say it comes in twice that amount because some weeks you worked 20 hours, 24 hours, whatever. Guess what? All that extra then goes into your savings and you get to save it for retirement, or you get to save it for camp or for mission trip or whatever it might be. Start with the lowest possible amount and budget based on that. What you don't want to do is you budget based on the largest amount or what you really think you'll get if you work hard, because things don't always go according to plan. And something I didn't get to talk about today is that we should always have a backup plan. So not just money, but if you're planning a trip, you should have a backup plan. If you're planning a church event, you should have a backup plan. When we have outdoor services, we have a backup plan in case it rains. We'll just have the service inside like normal. But you always need to have a backup plan, especially when it comes to money. So your backup plan for that would be, don't budget for the largest amount of money you think you can make. You budget for the smallest, get by with that, and then everything that comes in over that is just special and extra, and you get to use it for saving up for other things in the future. This is something you also have to think about for taxes. For those who get who do contract work or they're self-employed, they have to budget for taxes as well because that has to be paid. It's not automatically taken out by an employer. So you have to budget. I recommend that when you do something like that, you budget 30% for taxes, maybe even higher, and then you save that for when taxes come around. And if in the end your taxes only come out to being 15-20%, then it's a gift. You have extra money that you then can save for something else. But if you plan and say, well, I'm pretty sure taxes will only be 12%, and then they come in at 30%, now you have to find money somewhere. And so start with the least amount that you can possibly do and get by on. Make sure it aligns with what your values are, and then you budget, and anything extra is just special. Yeah, and when you are self-employed, income changes month by month as well. That's a very good point. Now, another thing is you say, well, I'm budgeting this, but what I need as far as necessities and things go don't match up with my income, then that's probably a pretty good sign you actually need a better job or a second job or two extra jobs, if you can't cover all your necessities. Now, if your necessities are all covered and you say, I don't have extra money for going out to eat, not such a big deal, because that's just something you like to do. That's something that isn't necessary for you to stay alive. But there are times when you do have to take that into consideration, where the things that you value and the things you need are way more than what you have coming in, and so you have to figure out another job, and a second one, or a different job. Sorry about that. My camera, maybe my camera battery died. I think it did. So I am still here, and I can still see everything and answer, but I do not have a video to share with you anymore. Sorry about that. I'll just put the homework back up on the screen. Any other questions? And again, like I said last night, you are welcome to send me questions privately. Hansons, thank you for joining us. We will talk to you later. Appreciate your input as well. Anybody else with questions before we end here? And I know some of you may not have questions, you just enjoy listening, but if we don't have any more questions for you to listen to, then we will probably end here. So I'll just wait another few seconds, see if anything else comes in. And if not, then we will call it a day. And maybe I've been referring to having something tomorrow night. We aren't doing this tomorrow night. It'll be Thursday night. So if I, along the way, said something about coming back here tomorrow or doing something tomorrow, it's going to be Thursday night. Tomorrow night will be our service at church, and so I will be there, and missions trip meeting, and so... All right, Abigail, how should I budget things out if it's for savings for things? So I'm going to start answering this, but if you could kind of give me an idea for what it is specifically. I mean, you don't have to tell me everything, but if you have specific things in mind, like a car or camp or whatever it is that you're thinking about. Okay. Car, presents for people, stuff like that. Once again, look at your income that you have. Take the lowest amount that you think you'll make, and also factor in, okay, well, in June I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, so that month I'm only going to be working for a couple weeks at the most. I would say take whatever it is, the lowest amount you know that you'll make for a month. Use that as a starting point for your budget, and then start putting in there. Let's just take the car for example. Right now, if you want to get a good reliable car for just around town, let's say maybe for driving to work, you might be able to find something in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. Now, the market has gone up a little because of inflation and because of lack of cars being sold, used, and such, so it might be higher than that. But if you say, well, I just need something that will get me from here to there, and I don't need all the fancy things, um, then you can maybe start out with something much cheaper. So figure out what that amount is. Let's just say it's $2,000 that you need to get a car that works for you. Um, what you need to do first is say, or decide, when do I need this? Do I need this now? If you need this now, you probably need to forget everything else that your money could go toward and put it toward that. Now you say, well, I'm also saving up for a missions trip. Okay, then you need to find what the balance is and then say, maybe I need to work a little more. But let's say you don't actually need a car now. Let's say you don't need the car until the end of summer. You can get by without it until then. So let's say September. So we're in May, so we have June, July, August. You need, for a $2,000 car, you need to save up about $700 a month. And so you look at your budget and you say, I'm making $800 and I want to get a car in September. I need to save $700 of this for a vehicle. So then what you do is you put that in your budget, you write it down, and you make sure all the rest of your other expenses don't exceed the 100 so that you aren't dipping into your car's savings line item. And then that money, as it comes into your bank, even though you see it there and you bring in your money to the bank and it says you have $1,200, you say to yourself, okay, I know I have that much, but I'm also saving for the car. So my budget says that I can't spend more than $100 on these other things for this month. So that way, when September comes around, you now have that $2,000 and you start looking for a car. Same thing with gifts. Part of it is you may have to decide that even though I want to give someone this $100 gift for their birthday in July, I'm not going to have $100 saved up for that by that time. And so you go with a smaller gift. But once you identify, okay, this is how much money I need for these gifts, or by November, I need to have $300 saved to get all these gifts for different people, then you put that in there and you say, okay, from now until November is 6 months, and so in order to get the $300, I need to save $50 a month. Okay, so then you put that in your budget, $50 gifts for Christmas. Be really specific about it. When the money comes, it goes into your bank, but just because it's there, you don't pull out your debit card and you use it. You keep it on paper and you say, all right, I've May, June, July, I've saved this $150 so far. I'm on track. I know it's in the bank. It's not going anywhere else. And so that by the time November comes around, I have my goal and I can get these gifts. Do it that way for a car. Do it that way for gifts. Do it that way for whatever else you may have. Think ahead. Say, you know what? In this month, I would really like to go to this retreat. Or I would like to buy this thing that I've been looking forward to for a long time. This musical instrument. Whatever it may be. So hopefully, let me know if that helps answer your question or not. If it doesn't, I'd be glad to talk more about it, even at church or some other way. But it's a really good question because a lot of people don't think that way. And so they are just spending the money on the things they need, and they're over budgeting for things that they could spend less. And then the time comes when they need something like a car, or Christmas comes and they want to buy gifts for people, but they can't. And so they start getting into all this credit card debt. You do have to plan ahead of time and then go by what you have on paper. Don't just look at your bank account. Go by what you've written down. Another option, and I've told this to James even as far for taxes go for DoorDash, I said, you can set up another bank account and you set it up so that the money that goes into your regular account is transferring money over into your other checking account on a weekly or a monthly basis so that that money actually isn't visible to you in your main bank account. but it is if you were to log into your other account. And so I actually have several checking accounts. And I have ones that don't have monthly fees, so I'm not paying to have them, to keep them open. And so I mentioned earlier the account for my vehicles expenses. That is a checking account that I opened with TCF Bank probably 5 years ago. And then they switched to Huntington Bank 2 years ago, I think. And I haven't been using that account for anything. I had some money in there, but I wasn't using it. So I decided just about a month ago to start transferring this money into my Huntington account automatically on a monthly basis from my main banking account with Chase. And now what happens is this money is going over there, and so when I need to repair my car, like I need to right now, and I bought some things for doing that, I then withdraw the money from that other checking account for the purpose that I have it, which is for my vehicles. And this keeps me from seeing all this money in my main account and saying, oh man, I have this there. I can purchase this now. Keeping it separate that way, having a couple extra checking accounts for bigger things like that, like a car, or maybe someday you can start saving for a house right now. You can start putting aside $20 a month or $50 a month for a house in the future for a down payment. And if you have it just going to another checking account that's free, you're not paying anything for it, and it just goes on in automatically, and in 5 years, 10 years, you're ready to start looking for a house and you already have money in there that you haven't touched. So I do recommend, if you don't mind having extra checking accounts open at different banks for that reason, you can do that too. And be careful when you're doing that. Like, if you want some recommendations for different checking accounts to open, I'd be glad to help out with that too. Because, like, if you're open a checking account with a U.S. bank, you do have to pay monthly fees unless you have like a certain amount of money in there every month or something, or have a credit card. I don't remember what it was, but I had an account with them, and my mortgage was with them, so I was paying money for my mortgage, and so I didn't have to pay on that account. But then once my mortgage switched to a different bank, I actually had a checking account with them that now I had to pay a monthly fee on, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. And so I was losing money automatically every single month in there. So if you are interested in that idea of having a separate checking account for bigger expenses and saving money that way, we'd be glad to talk to you and let you know some banks where you can do that and it won't cost you anything. So that's another way to also save up for bigger items. Any other questions? Also, if you come on Thursday and you already have questions prepared, feel free to put those in the chat at any time, whether that's at the beginning before we start, or as I'm talking about something else. You're more than welcome to put it in the chat, and I will go back through as I see them come up, and I can answer those questions then at the end of that session. So that we can get everything covered. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in, and I know some people have left us already, which is totally fine because we covered everything. And since I don't see anything else coming in, then I want to thank you guys again for joining. Glad that technology makes it possible for us to be able to do this. and I've enjoyed being able to share some things with you. Again, we couldn't get into everything really specifically, but I'd be glad to answer any other questions, talk to you about that later. So thank you for joining. Have a great night. If you're coming tomorrow night, we'll see you. Otherwise, we will talk again on Thursday. All right. See you guys later.